Hello and welcome to Tertulia TV. This is episode 29 and we're coming to you on Friday from the garden and it's absolutely sweltering. This is our first day off, the two of us, in quite a while. The shop's been mad busy since we opened, which is fantastic. So today finally we get a day off together. And so we're here to talk about books on our day off. So Neil, what have you been reading?
Well, I've just finished this Alexandra from Edmund Richardson from Bloomsbury, The Quest for the Lost City, and it's basically kind of like the man who would be king. It's kind of about the guy who really was the man who would be king, a renegade English soldier up in Kabul in Afghanistan looking for treasure, and it's just it's actually a treasure. It's a brilliant book.
So it's a mad story about him, but also about the treasure he uncovers.
Yes,
back
from Alexandra the Great.
Alexander,
yeah, it's just brilliant, and so that's just finished, and I absolutely loved it. And then I've just started this Eden from Ed O'Loughlin, and who Ed came into the shop to see us, and so far so good. And Breed, what about you?
Yeah, so actually we're going to go and talk to Ed because he talks to us in the shop. We're going to go we're going to go over to him in a moment. What am I reading at the moment? So I've just started Tessa McWatt, The Snow Line, which I just absolutely love the book itself. It's beautifully produced. Tessa is a Canadian author and this is her 7th book, and a lot of her books are about belonging and race. She's from British Guyana herself, but lived in Canada and now lives in England. And this book is about India, and it starts off, there's kind of 4 characters and they're in India. They all have a connection to India, but they all have different relationships with the country. So there's a beautiful story itself, but also the whole connection and their sense of belonging. So absolutely gorgeous book and a fantastic summer read. Also, I'm reading this at the same time, How Confidence Works by Ian Robertson. I've read another book by his, The Winner Effect. He is a fantastic writer. He's a lecturer at Trinity. He's a clinical psychologist and a neuroscientist, and does lots of work on futurology, and he's on all sorts of committees and on the radio and TV. But this book is amazing. It's so brilliant and easy to read. It's about what confidence is, what it actually means to can make things happen, and how our whole thinking about ourselves, our whole belief system is centered around was really at the heart of confidence and how important it is in life. So I would recommend it to absolutely anyone. I'm halfway through and absolutely love it. And I just finished this. It isn't out yet, but it's called Unsettled by Rosaline Mcdonough. It's by Skene Press, who also published Why the Moon Travels, which we promoted last year. Rosaline is a traveller lady and she has a disability as well. So the story is really about her. It's a memoir told in a collection of essays, and they are absolutely amazing, stunning. I can't wait for it to come out. It's going to be coming out in the next couple of months, so I would recommend that to anyone. And the artwork is stunning at the front as well, so look forward to that being published.
So now we're going to go over to Kim Gantis, who's going to talk to us about me and Jane Souter, who's a lecturer in DCU, and we're going to talk about her book, Black Wave. Kim lives in Beirut, and we managed to get her to talk to us about it because it's just my favourite book of the year so far. And
so over to Jane and to Neil, who are going to be talking to Kim.
Great. Hi Kim. Lovely to meet you.
Hello.
We love your book. We have it in the bookshop, and we've sold a good few copies, and we're still stocking it now. And it's interesting that we came across the book because of Alaya's books in Beirut, who we have a connection with through Neve, who's anyone with an Irish connection is good for us. And it's a lovely bookshop. And when we found out that it was sort of partially destroyed in the explosion last August, we got in touch, and we were happy to help a little bit with maybe helping stocking some of the books back again. So
that's wonderful. Yeah, it's a great bookshop.
It is. And
it's nice to know it has a community of supporters around the world.
Absolutely. So we're here to talk about Black Wave, and basically just an incredible book about the whole history, the recent history in the Middle East, and how things have turned out in the last 40 years. It's funny because 40 years ago, in 1979, I was actually in the Middle East, which is kind of unusual, in Beirut, not in Beirut, but in Jerusalem,
Right.
in Israel, on a kibbutz. And I had no idea what was going on around me. But I needed to read your book to find out what was happening at the time. So how long did it take you to write the book?
So it depends when you start counting. You know, books often start with an idea that some authors start, you know, scribbling notes, and some authors start thinking about the idea and letting it percolate for a long time. I started thinking about the idea in 2014. I worked throughout the year of 2015 on putting together a proposal for a publisher and really stress testing the thesis at the heart of the book, which is this idea that 1979 is such a turning point, such a pivotal year for the region, not just because of the geopolitical changes, but because of the cultural, social, and religious changes, which makes it such an unusual, pivotal year. So I spent 2015 working on the proposal, which was quite big and meaty. It was, I think, 70 pages. And then we got a book deal in early 2016. But in 2016, I was still in the US and I was working for the BBC, and I had to cover the 2016 presidential campaign, which was something totally different. So I did that, and then I came back to the book in April 2017. I took a leave of absence from work and started doing more research. And I essentially worked pretty much nonstop only on the book from 2017 till the end of 2019.
Wow.
A lot of research, a lot of thinking, a lot of time spent in isolation. So I was confined before confinement. So I was ready for the pandemic. Although by the time the pandemic came around, I thought I could sort of go out and celebrate the publication of the book, and then I found myself, you know, back in confinement. But the actual writing process, you know, after all the research was done, after all the sketching, the real writing, I think, was from summer 2018 to summer 2019. That's sort of 12 months of very focused, concentrated writing.
Yeah, it comes across like that. It really does. I mean, there's just such a lot of detail. You know, I kind of knew things, little snippets, which you pick up on the news, but to put it all together, I mean, just it's a magnificent piece of work.
Thank you. It's great to hear people from around the world reacting to the book. It's great to know that it's being read in Ireland, including in Northern Ireland. I've had people from Belfast get in touch, but others as well from Ireland. I should have looked up his name before I spoke to you, but I had an orchid grower and ice cream maker from Ireland get in touch that they'd read the book and loved it. I had people from Milan write to me during confinement to say that I was their confinement companion. So it's not touching just people from the region or people from the diaspora, but really people everywhere. And I have to say thank you to my incredible research assistants who made all the granular detail possible. They spent hours going through, you know, newspapers, books, photographs, videos to get me those granular details, and that's what makes this book so alive, I think.
And Kim, sorry, Jane here.
Yes.
I'm a friend of Neil's, and I read it and absolutely love the book and love the kind of the different perspective, the fact that it doesn't come from a kind of security American focused perspective. Really interesting, and all the detail. But I'm sure some of our viewers won't actually have read the book yet. So, you know, the central thesis, as you said, was about 1979 and how this was a pivotal year, and you pick kind of 3 events that really are at the heart of everything that happened afterwards. So I was just wondering if you could just sort of quickly outline that, so as our viewers have an idea kind of what's the heart of the book.
Yes, of course. So I did want to make the book accessible to as wide an audience as possible. And that's why it is precisely, as you mentioned, Jane, written from, not from a security perspective or a, anti-terrorism angle or purely geopolitical angle. That's why we have, orchid growers in Ireland and, sports reporters from Milan reading the book. I wanted to make it accessible to a wide audience. And what we ended up with is what I like to describe as a 1001 Nights of modern geopolitics in the region, with characters, TV anchors and poets and clerics, activists from Egypt to Pakistan, from Iraq to Lebanon, Syria, and of course Saudi Arabia and Iran, who helped to bring this book come alive and make it a story that is accessible to readers everywhere. And I focus on the year 1979 because I found that this year is, as I mentioned, pivotal. You have many pivotal years in a country's history or a region's history, but it's usually about geopolitics or domestic politics. You have wars or coups. You have the falls of empires like the Ottoman Empire, the creation of new states like Israel. But what I found with all of these events is that they were political or geopolitical turning points. What was different about 1979 is that it also unleashes dynamics that changed the culture, people's understanding of religion, and eventually starts changing our collective memory, our own understanding of our history. And the three key events at the heart of 1979 are the Iranian Revolution, which reaches its climax in February of 1979 with the return from exile of the Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini and the final overthrow of the Shah and his regime. The second event is the siege of the Holy Mosque in Mecca in Saudi Arabia in November of that year. And finally, it is the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, which starts the war against the Soviet occupation of Afghanistan, which brings together Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, and the United States to fight what was then the good war against the Soviet, but which has so many unintended consequences. Those three events are at the onset unrelated, but they become completely intertwined, and they create this terrible mix of dynamics that unleashes this black wave onto the region as Iran becomes an Islamic republic and starts to try to export its sort of state-led Shiaism to the rest of the Muslim world, as Saudi Arabia becomes even more conservative than it was and feels it has to compete with Iran as well. And those cultural, religious trends start mixing with the militancy, Islamic militancy that is born on the battlefields of Afghanistan. And those three trends then start traveling all the way to Pakistan, all the way to Egypt, and the rest of the Arab and Muslim world.
The one thing I was really fascinated by is you say it's a story of people. So, I heard you saying there that you had research assistants, because I was thinking, how can one woman, even a fabulously talented journalist from the BBC, interview so many people and have so much idea about even emotions that people were feeling at the time? The kind of precision, it's almost a painterly precision of, where they were, what their surroundings looked like, how they felt. It was just magnificent. So just how on earth did you find all these people and do all of this research?
So I did all the interviews. I traveled to Pakistan, to Egypt, to Iraq, to Saudi Arabia, I was in Lebanon, so I could do my interviews here. I did not travel to Syria, but I knew Syria quite well, and I did my interviews for Syria over Skype. I had been to Iran before. I was not given a visa to travel there again, but I did my interviews with the characters at the heart of the Iran chapters in the US because they're in exile. So I did all the interviews myself, and what the research assistants helped with are more of the granular details around the geopolitical events and the history and the news headlines and confirming some of the details. How did I find all the characters? Sometimes I don't know myself. I think serendipity, luck, and my own knowledge of the history of the region and my own reporting over the last 20 years in the region helped to bring it all together. I'll give you a small example. During my travels to Pakistan in 2014, 2015, when I was still working for the BBC, I started thinking about this, as I said, I started thinking about this idea, this thesis of Iran and Saudi Arabia as rivals, and where did it all begin, and how did it affect us, and is that the beginning of what went wrong in the region and what we did to ourselves? And that was the year of the rise of ISIS, and I was in Pakistan, and I was asking scholars there whether they worried about ISIS reaching Pakistan and the Sunni Shia sectarian violence spilling over. And the scholar looked at me and he said, well, actually it started here. And I said, what do you mean? And so I started thinking about the impact of what had happened in the 80s in Pakistan on the Middle East. I started thinking about Saudi Arabia's role in Pakistan and looking at it more closely, and how Saudi Arabia's influence over Pakistan had changed that country and its culture and its openness and its diversity and its pluralism. And I came across the name of Mehtab Rashdi, this television anchor who was so forceful in pushing back against the dictator who ruled over Pakistan in the 80s as he tried to Islamize the country, and how she, in essence, told him to go to hell. And she was so brave and courageous. And so that name stayed with me. And as I was putting the book together and the structure and trying to put together this matrix of the different years and the different events, I had a whole, I had a cork board where I had put all the names of the countries and all the decades, and I had pinned all the different events in each country to see how they interconnected. And so I started pinning down the names of people I thought might be interesting. And so I traveled to Pakistan to do my research, and I had lots of interviews lined up in Islamabad, in Lahore, and in Karachi. Karachi was my last stop, and Mehtab Rashdi was one of my last interviews. And so I was doing the, I was doing all the interviews, and I wanted the book to be driven by characters, but I didn't think I could pull it off because I thought it was too complex. I thought it was the kind of work that would take you 10 years to find the right character that would slot right there in the bigger picture that you're trying to paint. And I get to, Karachi after 10 days in Pakistan, where I'm thinking, oh my God, I don't know what I have a lot of stuff, but I'm not sure it's going to come together. I don't have one central story, but I still have Mehtab Rashdi. And I go to her house in Karachi and we sit down for 5 hours. And it is the character that I've been looking for. She is the story that I'm trying to tell in Pakistan. And similarly, actually, the way it starts, the moment I realized that maybe I could pull it off, that maybe I could have a book driven by the characters, was my very first trip of research for the book, which was in October 2018. My first research trip was to Egypt, and I thought, okay, I don't know how I'm going to put this together, but I have to start the research. And so I go to Cairo for 4 days and Alexandria, and I have someone helping me on the ground. I said, I'll just go for 4 days. I'll get a sense of, what I can get. In my readings, I'd come across the name of Nasser Abu Zaid, this famous Egyptian scholar and intellectual. And I thought, gosh, I wonder whether I could find his wife. And I messaged some friends in Cairo. I said, might you know Ibtihal Yunus? And they're like, yes, of course I know Ibtihal Yunus. I'll put you in touch. So, okay, so again, 3 days in Cairo and Alexandria. Ibtihal Yunus is one of my last interviews. And I go to her home and we sit down, and she's incredible. And she tells me the stories of her life with Nasser Abu Zaid and everything that happened to us. And she starts talking about the year 1979 and what it meant to her. Because, as an author, you're constantly doubting yourself. So up until, the book was, in the proofs, the page proofs, I was still thinking, maybe I've got it all wrong. Maybe this doesn't hold together. Maybe my thesis isn't right. And so to sit down with Ibtihal Yunus and to hear her say, let me tell you about 1979. Let me tell you what that year meant to me. But not only that, on that same trip, I was looking around. I thought maybe I could have younger characters in the book as well. And I'd come across the name of the novelist that I profile in the book, Ahmed Naji. And so I meet him. And at the beginning, I'm thinking, yes, he's great. He's interesting. His story is interesting. Maybe I could do something else about him. I'm not quite sure how he fits, but he has a lot to say about the topic, about Egypt, about Saudi Arabia, about Iran. And suddenly he starts talking to me about Nasser Abu Zaid and how Nasser Abu Zaid was his hero, and he'd learned so much from him, and he'd gone to his lectures when Nasser Abu Zaid came back from exile. And suddenly it all came together. And that was the only research trip I needed for Cairo. It was those 4 days, which were supposed to be a pre-research trip, a pre-interview trip, and I had everything I needed in that one trip. And so, the stars aligned. My research came together. The characters were there. They fell into my lap. I was lucky. I made the right moves. I did the right research. The research assistants were incredible. So yeah, that's how it kind of all came together.
You'd make a great detective, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what journalists are, in a way, right?
In a way,
yeah,
of course.
Yeah, the journalistic training is
It's having, it's having
absolutely
this
key.
sort of this passion for detail, the open mind to think, oh, that sounds interesting. I'll keep it somewhere in the back of my mind. And then having a nose for, oh, that sounds like a good story. But then also being able to step back and look at the big picture and think, this is how it all fits together.
There was one thing I was wondering, do we have a minute?
Yeah, go on quickly.
Yeah.
Yes, of course.
Okay. So, well, there's two. So you picked the more interesting question. There were two things I was going to ask you. One was, I was fascinated by the kind of the role of information. So you started off with, the kind of the cassette tapes and so
Yes.
on being spread, and the books. And then later on, there was kind of the role of social media, which was used in a kind of a positive way in terms of the unveiling and everything. But then on the other hand, we know that social media, it can be used to drive polarization and things. So I was wondering about that. And the other thing I was wondering about was why you end with a message of hope. But yet I was really struck about the kind of the role of the control of women in the book. And some of the really strong, really powerful women that you focus on and that you interview and so on, but also the role of women in actually driving women into the and especially middle and upper class women. So I'm just wondering how you see these things kind of playing together, the kind of role of social media, women, the control, and what there gives you hope.
Hope is what keeps us going everywhere, right? Hope is what kept us going during a pandemic, that it would end, that we would get the vaccine, that we would be able to fight this. Hope is what, hope with pragmatism and with hard work. There were a lot of people at work to try to find the vaccine. And then now, people are getting vaccinated. In the US, during the Trump era, 4 years of assault against democracy, there was hope that with the right people, the right institutions, the right organizing, You could fight back if you were a Democrat, if you believed in progressive values and democratic values and in institutions, and were standing up against populism. There was hope that it could work, that it could come together, that an election could change things again. And that's what happened. It's not a done deal, but that work continues. And so hope in the region, for me, comes from meeting all these incredible characters in the book who for decades, away from the headlines that are focused on terrorism and dictators and tyrants in the West, away from these headlines, people are continuously fighting for a better future, for progressive values, for more openness, for the role of women. Women are at the forefront of the battle against extremism, against intolerance, against corruption. Look at protests in Lebanon today, in Iraq, in Iran. They're the women who are pushing back. Look at the role of Mehtab Rashdi in my book, saying no to the dictator. All these women who protested against Zia al-Haq's Islamization of laws, Islamization of the country, and the rise of intolerance. You know, these protests took place repeatedly again and again in the 80s, but the West was not paying attention because the focus was on the help that Zia al-Haq was giving to the war against the Soviets in Afghanistan. And so it's important to pay attention to what the people of these countries want, because at the end of the day, we want the same thing. We want governance, we want rule of law, we want justice, we want accountability. And the women are definitely out there leading the way. Of course, you have women who are conservative, who are in the middle class pushing for conservative values, for the veil, for more, you know, Quranic Quran readings, etc. Similarly, in the US, you have women at the heart of the faith movements and the support for Trump and the Christian values and the, you know, these barriers that we construct between different civilizations, I think are not what are the real barriers. The barriers are between those people who believe in equality, in freedom of expression, and those small minorities who are fighting for populism or intolerance or extremism or religious extremism. Extremism comes in all sorts, in all shapes and forms. And I think those are the divisions that we need to be looking out for. And those divisions are sometimes fed by, as you said, social media. Today, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok are great ways of communication. Certainly during the pandemic and Zoom, of course, those were all ways to communicate, to connect, to be together when we were apart. But there are also ways that are used to create silos and to feed misinformation. And so it's up to us to ask for better information and not to replicate or not to spread information that we're not sure of.
Well, that's fantastic, Kim. Well, I think that's a good note to finish on. A lot of hope, and we really hope that things get better in Lebanon for you and for the people of Lebanon. And,
yes,
I look forward to your next book.
Yes.
Well, I lived through 15 years of civil war, and you can't survive that if you're not hopeful that things do end. You know, for those who lived in the shadow of the Berlin Wall and grew up thinking that this is just how it was unthinkable that one day the Berlin Wall would fall, but one day it did. And it requires a certain alignment of events and confluence of geopolitical, you know, moves, but things do change. Sometimes the immediate positive aspect of it is not apparent, and sometimes it requires another phase of darkness. But I do believe that when the good people come together, good things can happen.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah. That's a great. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
A pleasure to meet you.
Yeah.
And you, and I hope I can visit Dublin again in the not too distant future. And
and Beirut's on my list of places to visit at some stage. I'm dying to go to Elias Books.
Yeah, and come west if you go to Dublin to Westport.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. Take care now.
Bye now. Bye.
Bye-bye.
So thank you, Kim and Jane. That's amazing. Yeah, the story of what's going on in the Middle East. Certainly, the book is an eye opener. That's for sure.
It is. So now we're going to have a quick chat with Ed.
Yeah, with Ed
who popped into the shop.
Okay, so over
okay, thank you very
to
much.
Ed. Thank you.
Bye bye.
And we will see you on the next episode. Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye bye. Hi, welcome to Tertulia TV, and we've got Ed O'Loughlin here. He's going to talk about his new book this evening. So you've popped in to see us. You're visiting Ackle, is it, this week? Or?
No, in Inishbofin.
Oh, Inishbofin. Oh God, you're not there today now. It's gorgeous today.
We tried very hard to stay an extra day. We were due to leave today, and then the weather didn't get good till yesterday evening. But it's too late now to back out.
Yeah.
And to, very reluctantly.
It's always the way. Oh. So your book, yes, we've been selling in the shop. It's got really good reviews. Maybe just tell us a little bit about it, or why you chose this subject, or.
Well, it's a thriller in its structure, a chase thriller. But what it's actually about is money and the nature of money and what it's doing to the planet right now. And a very high concept idea, which I won't go into because it would be a spoiler. And I thought I would use it to write a book because we look around us and we see how not just inequality but the drive for ever bigger profits is basically destroying the only lifeboat that we have. So it's a big concept book, but
big issue, yeah. Big book, yeah. And we've been selling, really well at the shop too, so people have heard of it and they're engaging with it, which maybe gives us some hope for our future. Thanks, Ed.
you have to buy it.
You have to buy it. No, you do have to buy it.
So yes, that is a good thing. I want money.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Ed.
Thank you so much.